Now what I want to discuss is quickly the partitioning. Okay, the partitioning, and I think indexing is also there. Yes. So partitioning and indexing, how it works with ADSOs. So how a partitioning works, first of all, partitioning is still possible and indexing is also possible with ADSOs, where you can see that under the additional runtime properties. So if you go there in the ADSO, you will have settings tab. You have general tab where you will define the modeling properties. You have the details where you will actually create the groups and you can see the fields. And then there are settings for ADSOs. The first setting is partitions, and then we have indexes, right? So partitioning and indexing is still relevant for advanced DSOs. That means even though it is HANA based, there can be scenarios where the cardinality is very high for a particular field or for a particular info object, like billions of unique records, and there to improve performance, you do indexing. And you do partitioning to better organize the data so that the report reads only relevant partitions and the extraction also deals with only relevant partitions. And partitioning will also enable you to store more data in the ADSO. Okay, so there is a limit of data volume you can store in an ADSO. Can somebody tell me what is the limit? Anyone? Guys, am I audible?
Could you please repeat your question, Dipanshu?
Okay. How much data? I'm not talking about memory. The count, record count. How many records, maximum number of records I can load in an ADSO? There is a limit. What is that limit?
I'm not sure.
Sorry?
2 billion.
Correct. 2 billion records. 2 billion records is the maximum limit for an ADSO to store. But for a large organization like your Coca-Cola or Pepsi or Walmart, the Fortune 500s, 2 billion is nothing. They have data in trillions sometimes, but billions definitely you will find easily they will exceed 2 billion very easily. They will go to 10 billion, 20 billion, 30 billion. So then how do you make sure that this ADSO is able to handle that many records? You create partitions. So every partition now will be able to handle 2 billion records. If you don't partition the ADSO, then maximum data you can put is 2 billion. But if you say I create 8 partitions, for example, now I can have 16 billion records stored in my ADSO, because every partition of an ADSO can handle 2 billion, up to 2 billion records. So that is another major advantage of having partitions. You increase the capacity to handle more data in ADSO tables. Okay. So partitioning and indexing are very much relevant for ADSO. What type of partitioning is there? We have two types of partitioning: primary level partitioning and secondary level partitioning. What is primary level? Primary level means all the tables will have that partitioning by default by SAP. You are not in control of that. Primary level partitioning is done automatic in the background by the system for all the ADSO tables, meaning your inbound table, your active data table, and your changelog table. Every table will have the primary level partitioning, and that partitioning is based on hash partitioning. Okay, that is a hash partition. So if I take a standard ADSO, let's see if this is a standard ADSO. Yeah, this is a standard ADSO. So changelog is also there. So I have all the three tables here. Okay. So now let's take one table, like for example, our inbound table, right? This is the name of the inbound table. Let me log into my HANA Studio. So I'm going at the DB level now. So I'm logging to my HANA Studio and I will show you the primary level partitioning. So primary level is relevant for all the tables and it is automatically done by system and it is hash. The partition scheme is hash partitioning. Okay, so now let's log into HANA Studio quickly.
So this is WebID version, right, Devanshu?
Sorry, come again.
This is WebID.
No. This is not Web ID. Actually, I have to switch between my web and the Eclipse because remember I told you that they could not open the ports. There is certain port issue with the vendor. So I am not able to access the HANA systems in the Eclipse in the systems view. I have to go back to VDI and from there I'm able to log in. But if you are using a different vendor and they have the VDI already, the remote desktop already there, then you don't need to switch to the VDI. From here only in the systems, you should see the system, the HANA system there added, and then you can jump there. But unfortunately, there are some port issues with the current vendor which I am using. That's why I am shifting to VDI. Okay, so we are in our BW4HANA. This is the DB. This is the HANA database for the BW application. Now what I will do is I will show you that table. So we'll go to the catalog. Which schema will have that table? The BW owned schema. This is the BW owned schema, SAP HANA DB. So you expand that and then filter on this table. So I'll put a filter and the table name we copied. So we'll paste it. Okay, I'll have to copy it again, I think. Okay, so this is the inbound table, okay, of this ADSO. So if you see the runtime information of the inbound table, so let's see if it is, yeah, so there you go. So we have /BIC/AZDSDHDR1. And if you see here, we have this symbol. This symbol means it is a partition table. If you see 3 disjoint columns, these are basically a symbol of partition table. So if you open this, okay, you will have runtime information, go there, and the partition specification is hash partition, and that hash partition is on document number. Why document number? That is the key field of the ADSO. So if you go to the details, the document number is the key field. So based on the key fields, the hash partitioning is done automatically by the system. This is called primary level partitioning. All the tables will have it. So if I go to the other table, so I'll filter for the active data table, which will be 2. That will also have hash. And similarly, changelog will also have hash. So this is the 2. So let's look at the runtime information for this table as well. So hash. So hash is also there in the active data table. Now let's look at the changelog. Last table, let's look at that. So I'll filter with 3. 3 is the changelog. So here also you will find hash. So hash is common between all the 3 tables, and this is done automatically. This is called primary level partition. Then you have secondary level partition also. Secondary level partition has automatic and manual. Automatic means system will do it. Manual means you will do it if you want. Secondary level partitioning, automatic is range, dynamic range based partitions, and that will automatically be done on which tables? Inbound table and change log table. Automatically the secondary partition is also done. So that means on the inbound table and change log table, both types of partitions, primary and secondary, will be done automatically. Primary will be hash, secondary will be dynamic range based on the request IDs or the request TSN, transaction sequence number. Because request IDs is available in changelog also and inbound table also. So that's why these 2 tables will automatically have the secondary level, and that's why you are able to see this is the changelog table number 3. You have the range, dynamic range based on request TSN number. And similarly on the inbound table also you have dynamic range, request ID or request TSN based. But on the active table, there is no secondary partition automatic because request IDs are not there in the active table. So there is no dynamic range request ID based partition. This is where you can do secondary partitions on the active table. Okay. So this is where the settings will come into picture and you will do the partitioning. You will provide the field for partitioning. So let's see if I can choose a field. So it is saying that with document number, I can, but matching items is document number because it's a key field. So it is identifying the key field as your partitioning criteria. So we'll say, for example, if I choose the key field, then this will be enabled static partitioning versus dynamic partitioning. What is static partitioning, dynamic partitioning? I will just tell you in a moment. But this is where you will do the secondary level partition on the active table. And then you can define your ranges. What is the low range? What is the high range? And then you can provide multiple ranges. So if I just say 001 to 0010, so 1 to 10, you say, yes, this is my first partition. This is partition number 1. Then you can add further partitions. Then 0011 to 0020, 11 to 20. So this is my second partition, so on and so forth. So you can mention your static partitioning there. If you choose dynamic partitioning, you cannot provide how many partitions system will create. Then it is dynamic in nature, meaning you just provide the field on which you want the partitioning and then you leave it to the system. System will identify the unique values and those many partitions will be created. That means dynamic partition will usually result in very high number of partitions. That's why it is not recommended. Static is better because you have control. You can say that I want 3 partitions or 2 partitions or 10 partitions. In dynamic partitioning, system will identify based on unique values of the field which you provide. So that's why be very careful with the dynamic partitioning. You are letting system decide and that can end up in a huge or large number of partitions, which is also not a good thing. You should have limited partitions and you should be under control. That's why static partitioning means you are under control of how many partitions you need. So that's the difference between dynamic partitioning and static partitioning.
Devanshu, I see DTO option with dynamic partitioning. Can you just explain a little bit how can we assign a particular partition to cold, warm, storage?
No, you cannot assign. That's what I'm saying. You just
what is
provide,
that button is that maintain temperatures?
Oh, this one, the temperatures. This is for hot, warm, and cold. That temperature.
Yeah, I know that, but how will it assign it dynamically to hot, cold, and?
See, for that you have to maintain the hot, cold, and warm criteria. The DTO has to be maintained first. What happens is in the property, you will first define that the temperatures, is it hot or is it warm or is it cold? And if you want warm, then which partitions or what is the criteria? Once you define the DTO options, then it will go to the temperatures and then it can maintain the partitions either in warm store. If the criteria matches the warm store, it will go to the warm store. If it is a hot store, it is in hot store. Right now, everything is in hot. So all the partitions what the system will create will be in hot store.
I'm only wondering because this is dynamic partitioning. So if we say check all the 3 check boxes, hot, warm, and cold.
No, you cannot do that.
It's a checkbox, no? So we cannot.
See, when you say warm, when you say cold, then you have to checkbox is enabled, but it will not make sense for you to say that same partition is in hot, same partition is in warm, same partition in cold. That doesn't make sense.
No, that doesn't make sense. But for the DSO, it can have all the 3,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, for DSO it can have. I was talking about the partitions. For partitions, it will be based on what criteria you have defined for hot, warm, and cold. Whether it's on partition level or an object level, that also comes into picture. So if I remove this cold, then you can define object level or partition level. So it is only relevant, object level is only relevant for the hot and warm. If you do cold also, then you can only define on partition level. So these two, temperature maintenance and the temperature schemas, go hand in hand.
Will this be covered in the coming sessions?
No,
Or?
this is an advanced topic. This is not covered. But
Okay.
I will give you the PowerPoint presentation, which will give you the details of how DTO, data tiering optimization, because previously it was called archiving process, where you maintain the temperatures and the cold store NLS is there. But now it is DTO. DTO is the new concept with extension nodes. You have to put an extension node for the DTO to work. So it's not that
Okay.
simple. You just checkbox and it will start working. You have to have a special node added. That's a basis activity. Then you will do DTO maintenance. There is a particular portal for DTO. You will maintain the criteria for hot and warm, and then it will start working.
Thank you.
Okay, that is,
So
sorry, unfortunately it's not
video?
covered. But there is a PowerPoint. So if you go to the material, if you see the topic material, there is something called data tiering optimization in BW4HANA. So there are a couple of presentations. Go through that and then you will get the details on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, coming back to the partitioning. So that is the difference between static partitioning and your dynamic partitioning. And this is the
Devanshu?
secondary level. Yes, tell me.
Can this partitioning be done even when the data is loaded, like you didn't do partitioning and we are like 1 year down the lane? Can we do at that time?
Yeah, you can do that. But then that will result in remodeling, I think. So you'll have to run the remodeling run, and then the data will be, the shadow tables will be created, data will be moved there, and then it will be moved to the partitions. So it is possible.
Don't you, is this similar to SPO, this DTO portion, or is it a different
Similar
concept?
to what, sorry?
SPO.
No. SPO is semantically partitioned object.
Right.
That has nothing to do with hot, warm, cold.
We are
SPO is what? SPO is, you are saying for North America, I'll have one ADSO, for Europe, I'll have one ADSO, for
Correct.
Asia, I'll have another ADSO. Nothing to do with hot, warm, cold.
Okay.
Hot,
The
warm,
manual
cold is,
partitioning that you were talking about, that can be compared to SPO in some sense, right?
so we have semantic groups in ADSO, which I will discuss. This PPT has the details. SPO is replaced by semantic groups. That means same kind of group and different ADSOs with the same structure can be generated, as many DSOs you want, using the semantic group. This partitioning is within the one DSO. Within a single ADSO, you can do the partitioning. Semantic partition is not within one DSO. This is, see, there are two types of partitioning, physical and semantic, right? This is physical partitioning. That means in the table itself, you are defining different partitions. SPO is not physical. You are saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ADSOs I'll have, and I'll keep different data set. That is different.
Okay,
right? So this is physical partitioning, and in physical partitioning, you can define static versus dynamic partitioning. That's what the two options SAP has given. So this is the range partitioning. So you have to provide the field, the partitioning criteria field based on which, like for example, cal year here, and then you can give low or high. And then based on that, in the HANA runtime properties, you will be able to see partition 1, 2, 3. So if you go to the HANA, here you will see the partitions here. Okay, parts and columns are there. So these are the columns, and then in this parts you will see 1, 2, 3, 4 if you have defined, and then how many, what is the size of your partition, what is the record count of that partition, creation time, so on and so forth. So this is physical partitioning, which is done on the ADSOs. Okay. So you can use partition to divide the entire data set of an ADSO into several smaller units that are independent and redundancy free. Partitioning can improve performance during the data analysis, and also it can help you to exceed the 2 billion records limitation. So this is the number of records, exactly the number of records a DSO can have. When you partition it, then you are saying that now each partition can handle up to these many records. 2000 million records, that means that is 2 billion records. Partitioning may also be needed if you use data tiering optimization. As I said, that goes hand in hand. So if you have DTO activated, because DTO needs an extension node, and in the training server, we don't have extension node. So that's why I'm not be covering this DTO, but this is done using an extension node. And once you define that this is the criteria, data older than 10 years goes to cold store. The inbound table and the changelog table in the data more than 5 years goes to warm store, which is extension node. And the remaining data stays in hot store. Once you define that in DTO, then the partitions which are created on the ADSO are also adjusted and the data is moved to the disk rather than keeping in the hot memory, which is RAM. So that goes hand in hand. Primary level and secondary level, I already told you, primary level is hash on all the tables. Secondary level is only on which tables? Which tables will have secondary level, guys?
All three.
All three will have secondary level partitioning by default?
Yeah, but two will have automatic, one will have manual.
Correct. So automatic by default means automatic. So by default, only two tables will have secondary, which is request ID based range, dynamic range partitioning, which is inbound table and changelog table. Manual secondary level partitioning you can do on the active table. So refers to a range partitioning that can be defined in the ADSO settings tab. Developers can select one of the key info objects or fields to be the partition criteria. So you can select key info objects only. Afterwards, manual ranges need to be set up. That means your low and high. Typical partitioning criteria objects are time characteristics, cal year or cal month and so on. And organization unit, sometimes zero country, can also define your partitions. Take into account that only the table of active data is in scope for this concept. That means, for example, if the data in an ADSO is of type data mart, will not be partitioned until you activate it. So if the DSO is data mart ADSO, right? So this partitioning is only relevant for active table. Remember that. If the data is not activated in the data mart ADSO, it is still there in the inbound table. Data will not be partitioned in the inbound table. It will, when you activate it, it goes to active table, then it will be distributed in the partitions, not before that. Okay. So what is the SAP recommendation? SAP recommends evaluating other concepts to control the data growth as well. Yes.
So Devanshu, in this cube type of DSO,
Yes.
we will be having only primary partitioning, right? Primary level part.
No, you can have secondary also. You can have secondary, but what I'm saying is, if you don't activate, say for example, right? You have a data mart ADSO, you have secondary level. Secondary level means active table only, and data mart has active table. So that means secondary partitioning, manual secondary partitioning can be done. Now, once you have done the partitioning, but you have not activated any data, your data will still be non-partitioned data. Partitions will exist, but they will be empty if you don't activate it. Once you activate it, then your partitions will be filled. Okay, so that means, say for example, there is a performance improvement due to partitions, right? If you don't activate it, you will not see the performance improvement because the partitions are empty, because the partitions, the manual partitions only refer to active data table. Okay.
Dipanshu, even after having primary like partition, hash partitions, it holds only 2 billion records.
Yeah, 2 billion records.
Okay, it's only when after doing the like secondary partitions, like it can hold more data.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's an SAP note 2374652 handling very large data volume with advanced DSO in BW4HANA. So if you need more details, then you can go there. What SAP recommends is there are different options. One is the semantic groups, which is the replacement of SPOs. So if your ADSO or if your data is exceeding 16 billion or 20 billion, and there is a limit to, I think, partitions also. I think you can do 8 or 10 partitions with 2 billion each, I think. I have to check what is the exact limitation on the number of partitions, but there is a limit on that also. So if you exceed that limit, then what SAP recommends is you create semantic groups. This is your semantic partitioning, not physical partitioning. That means you are saying that now I'll have multiple ADSOs, not just one ADSO, but multiple ADSOs. So that's what is the recommendation. Indexes, again, indexing is relevant for ADSOs. You can create secondary indexes, okay, on ADSO if required. For example, for a very complex lookup means you are looking up on a very granular level info object or field, and that has billions and billions of records, unique values. So definitely lookup will be slow. Even if it is HANA, does not mean that everything will be fast. So if the data volume is very huge, then even SAP HANA, you need sometimes secondary indexes. So index is again created on the active table. If there is no active table, then the index is created on the inbound table. Okay. So please remember this: partitioning, the secondary manual partitioning, that can only be done on active table, but indexes can be either on active table, and if active table is not there, say for example, it is just the inbound table, then the indexes will be created on the inbound table. But there is additional resource, so memory will be occupied, because every index you create, it will have extra memory occupied. So please, be careful and be judicious. Don't just start creating indexes blindly. Do some analysis and research before creating index if it's actually required or not, because it's going to take your HANA memory.